G'day guys, just checking that my microphone's on. Yes, it is good. Okay, got this GPX 5000 that has come in, and the fault with it was that as you were using it, it would go completely nuts and start screaming and carry on. So I had an examination and I fired it up and had it on the bench, and it was behaving quite normally until I just brushed here like that, and it would go completely bonkers and then settle down again. So I knew it was something in the wiring. And this is one here that has one of our early upgrades on it there. You can see the subboard in there for variable input amplification, which allows you to trim the detector for big deep gold, small gold, quieten it down in noisy ground and all the rest. But yeah, I think the fellow wants this one upgraded to the newest set of low noise modifications. Anyway, get back onto this gadget. So we know that you're touching here, the wires onto the coil connector here. And this is why on the detectors I don't like heat shrink. Get that bit of metal off that. You can see here the wires are heat shrunk onto, well, they're soldered, then got a heat shrink put over them. And if you grab it, that's nice and tight. And if you grab this one here, you'll go, oh, I wonder why it was noisy. Right, so you see the wire's completely either snapped off or has it got really thin and burnt off. It's hard to tell. I think it's probably snapped off. So, this is what I don't like, the heat shrink, because the heat shrink sits there and hides any bad solder connections. Oh, yeah. I'll get in there. I can see the wires have just snapped off. It's amazing, isn't it? Because these wires are copper and they're probably plated, um, with a nickel or a zinc mix or some composition of metals. They are copper, and even so, just vibration, um, continuous vibration on copper will break it. And it's just like on so many older detectors, you open them up and all the wires pop off. So what we'll do on this, we'll get rid of all this heat shrink material. We'll recut these wires on the ends, make sure they've got plenty of metal there, strip back nicely. That's enough solder to solder into the connectors. The other thing too I've noticed on a lot of the detectors as they get a bit of age, I'll point this out in a second. I'll just give all these wires a bit of a pull, see if anything else just falls off. You just never know. But sometimes the actual wire, the connection in here is broken, but the heat shrink grabs it so hard you can't tell. So the best thing to do is cut the heat shrink off, and if your detector players off, you can take the screws out of it and have a look. So yeah, that's a hidden fault, that one. Um, Quite common. Also, the other faults with the Mylars, because very thin copper on the power and audio data side of it there too. All this eventually breaks. All of it does. Yeah, so it's interesting. But what I was going to show you on this too, oh, this is a very ugly detector. It's been through the war. There you go. Whoever owns it knows that it's this one. But on the connectors, the plastic insert with the pins, I don't know if you can tell. You should be able to. Okay, I might zoom in a little bit. You can probably tell, but I don't know if you can tell or not, but the plastic insert is loose. I'm moving it in and out, right? And it's because this bit here, the metal body of the plug, isn't pressed hard enough over this plastic to hold it really tight, so it wiggles. Look at that. I can go. That's side to side motion. If you can see that, I'll just stick something like this between the wires if I can get it in there, and you can see that just moving crazy. All that movement causes noise, and even if you have your coil connector screwed up really tight, this isn't tight, and any movement at all will cause the where the pins go into the sockets, they'll move, and the slightest movement, even if the gold plating's perfect or anything, it's clean and that, as soon as the metal rubs, it will make noise. These are so sensitive that it'll pick up the very minute changes in resistance or conductance, depends which way you want to look at it. And those slight changes are amplified many thousands of times, and the detector will sound noisy. It's very easy to prove. You just plug one in and just hold the connector, and maybe the body to the socket is really tight. But if you grab the cable, and because all the pins in the cable are like this, right? As soon as you put a bend, this one's going to want to do that, and they're going to want to do that, up or down. It's like a rotational movement. If you bend the cable, it's not all going to just stay there. It's going to pull. It's going to pull the little pins in the little sockets around. It's going to cause movement. So you got to keep your cable rigid around that area. I think someone makes plastic clip-on holders, and there's you could even just stick a bit of Velcro around it, or whatever. I wouldn't say put a cable tie there in that case you want to change coils. It's painful, but some sort of cable holder. I know they exist. I have seen them, and yeah, it'll stop noise. So the trick is to keep all this stable. Um, even this movement here, you could put epoxy. Not, I don't mean cheap clear epoxy, but some really good epoxy in on the back of this to hold it in place. Will it really work? I don't know. What you really want to do, you take this. These are hard to get out too because they've got Loctite on them. But you take the whole thing out, and if you had a nice steel surface and you had some flat type of punch, you could actually punch around the top lip of the connector here and squash it down hard onto the plastic to stop any movement. Just tap it around, probably tap it in 6, 8, 10 places just to stop that movement. And the other end, lock that up as well. So that's the issue of this one anyway. But I'm going to take all that off, trim them up again, and redo it. Now the thing is, if you want to do this to your own detector, take note of the colours on the wires, where they go onto the pins. Write it down. Do not get it wrong, because if you get it wrong, normally a ton of smoke will pour out of the front end of the detector. It causes a lot of damage. Be very careful doing any wiring or rewiring in the detector. So that's a common one. Wires breaking. You can like on a lot of these detectors. You have a look at this one around here. So it's got a piece of foam on the back here. I don't know what it does. what does that do? A little bit of foam stuck there. A better place to put the foam would be to absorb vibration. And I was lost its stick now, but I would stick it on here. Because it's a long length of copper trace inside this mylar, you can get a natural vibration. You know, just having it in the back of the car going down dirt roads, you know, shake, shake, shake. Just the vibration work hardens the copper. Eventually it will break. So if you actually got something like this, you could dampen the vibration down and it would last a lot longer. Now, any part of this where there's long trace lengths, even here, which comes off the display board, you know, it's very flexible. It's hard, but a high frequency vibration will start wiggling that, and eventually it'll work out weak points and break, and you'll get these intermittent faults. So what do I just stick something on there so that it's the vibration can't do this. It's more like it's very slow. It absorbs all those high frequency vibrations and slows it right down. So instead of having you know, hundreds and thousands of small vibrations, you may only get a few slow ones. So, you know, that's the thing with copper. You know what copper's like. If you get a copper wire and if you sit there and bend it back and forth, you know, numerous times, eventually it snaps. Same as that. And that is so thin. You know, it's thin, paper thin, and it breaks. A lot of the breaks on these is where it goes into the connector on the fingers here. You can see that just along there. They break where the mylar stops because that is now a weaker point because it's just the copper is, you know, you can see they're gold plated, but the copper is just on the first bit of mylar. It's a little bit of a stiffening strip there, but the vibration will translate down and right along the mount point, it'll break the copper. Just going back and forth, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. So, you know, if you're brave and you want to make your detectors last a long time when you're out in the bush, if you're doing a lot of travelling with your detectors in your car and your vehicles, just get something like some little bits of rubber of some description, and just stick it across. The mylar's insulated, so you can stick anything across there. It's not going to short anything out, but you'll make sure that whatever you stick it on, like whatever the adhesive is, that it'll stick to this shiny mylar. So you probably want to stick some on and give it a bit of a, you know, adherence test. Just make sure it stays there. You just don't want to do it and then have it all fall off inside the detector and you're back to square one. Anyway, that's a bit of something to watch out for on these detectors. Anyway, catch us later.